I won't wear kid gloves and just tell people, you're right, this sucks, blah, blah,
Mhm.
blah. Like, I will listen. I'm very approachable. People know they can talk to me and I will listen, but I
Yeah.
won't always tell them what they want to hear.
Welcome to Hearts and Carts, the CPG podcast, the podcast about the people behind the products that are winning hearts and filling carts. This cast is for anyone with an interest in the world of consumer products. We're your hosts, Justin Osborne and Alex Hill, and our mission is to bring you weekly content that helps you be a better and more informed CPG professional. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Hearts and Carts. It's Alex here, and I am here with Justin. We are getting ready to meet with Vanessa Ordway. Justin, let everyone know a little bit about who Vanessa is.
So Vanessa Ordway is the head of sales for national grocery at Dreyer's Grand Ice Cream across the U.S. You might not know the name Dreyer's Grand Ice Cream, but you definitely know their brands. Haagen-Dazs, Drumsticks, a ton of other ice cream products. I know Vanessa really well from working with her at Vega. She was the head of sales for the US business while I was the head of sales for the Canadian business. So we were sort of attached to the hip and got to work together very closely. I love the way she approaches the business, her candor, her work ethic, her approaches to leadership. And I think you're going to get a lot of that in the episode coming up.
Well, guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow us on the various social media platforms. And without further ado, we'll jump into our conversation.
People, let me tell you about my best friend. He's a warm-hearted person who loved me till the end. People, let me tell you about my best friend.
Vanessa, how are you?
Hi, guys. How are you?
Doing good.
Did you like your intro song? Picked it
I
special
did.
for you.
I was waiting with anticipation of what you could possibly have picked for me. So I'm pleased. I was cautiously optimistic about it.
I got to tell you, I was a little hurt when Justin told me that was the song he was picking. I thought maybe we were best friends, but then I heard I might have competition. So,
Well,
Yeah.
you could he could play that for you for his Canadian best friend, and I could be
I
kind
like
of
it.
the US version. I'm
Play
okay
both
with
sides of
sharing
the border.
title, Alex. Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah. What I said to Alex was, well, you and I talk almost every day now, and Vanessa never calls me back. But then you did call me today, so So I don't know.
Earned.
Vanessa got some competition.
Thanks. Well, Alex, it's nice to meet you, and thanks
You
for
too.
having me on the podcast, you guys. It's a very exciting little adventure you started here.
Thank
Oh
you.
yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. I wore a special shirt for you as well, just to
Like it?
help you reminisce about your fantastic career with me.
Yes,
All the good
exactly.
times
It was,
together.
Justin. It was.
was.
That's for sure.
Yes, it was the best of times, and sometimes the worst of times as well. It was interesting. It was an interesting ride at Vega. So let me introduce you to everybody listening. So on the show today we have Vanessa Ordway, who is the head of sales at National Grocery at Dreyer's Grand Ice Cream. She's also a Beyond Brands mentor and a member of Chief. And I was lucky enough to work with Vanessa for, I think, about 2 years, maybe a bit longer, 2.5 years, at Vega, where she was sort of my US counterpart when I was on the sales strategy side and then when I was on the Canada side. So we got to chat with each other 5 times a day for a few years probably, which was great. And I just loved learning from her and getting to know her. And when I told her about the podcast, she right away was like, I want to come on, I want to talk. And I knew that I already wanted to have her on as one of our sort of first American guests to talk about her amazing career and share some of the cool things she's worked on that I've already got to learn about and share that with the broader audience. So welcome, Vanessa.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited. I totally invited myself on the podcast, Alex. So even if I wasn't on the original list, like
She was.
I'm now
Alex can
I'm
confirm.
now here.
You
I
were.
won't let you guys down for your inaugural sort of year. So I am happy to be here. And I feel like every time I start to, think about my career, I feel so much older. Like I am old, but then I like take a trip down memory lane and realize how long I've been doing this CPG thing. and how much longer I still have to work. So,
Yeah, I think about that one too.
Yeah. And I'm older than you guys. So, that's sad for you that you'll have to work even longer than that. So,
Yes.
anyway, I was excited to kind of talk things CPG, share any sort of wisdom I may or may not have, and just, learn a bit more about you guys as well.
Yeah. So let's start back at the beginning, Vanessa. So you said you've had a long career in CPG. So let's talk about you finishing up school and why did you even get into CPG in the first place, and then maybe walk through your career journey, and we'll ask a few questions along the way.
Yeah, sure. So somebody asked me this question recently, and it was kind of funny when I had to kind of remember how I got started. But I actually went to Penn State. We are for Spanish, to be a Spanish teacher. So that is what so that's what I went to college for. And I majored in Spanish. And then halfway through, I was like, what if I actually don't like that eventually? Like, I'm 18, maybe I should broaden that just a bit, maybe don't live.
That's a very specific job. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I thought that. So I broadened it to sort of be a double major in Spanish and business, and sort of just navigated through business and marketing. I ended up getting a double major degree. And when I graduated, I'm going to age myself here, in May of 2002, we were just coming out of sort of 9/11 and the impact that had on the economy, jobs, especially in the Northeast. There was a lot going on. And so there wasn't a ton out there, or at least kind of that was the sort of, rhetoric. And Penn State obviously is a huge school. And so we had a career fair. They came and set up in like the, Bryce Jordan Center tables, all these companies, right? And so I just went, I'm eager, put my little business outfit on, and I started walking around and just started asking questions to people. And, some of the booths had like food brands and beverage brands that I recognized, right? So I was like, oh, that's probably a good company. I know these brands. I really didn't know much about it. And so Newell Rubbermaid was there at the time, and they had some of their, I guess, younger employees, right, that were recruiting, and kind of pulled me into the booth, and we started talking. And they said, hey, we have this, leadership training program for sales. You don't really need experience. You just need to kind of be okay talking to people and, selling these cool brands like Sharpie markers. Would you be interested in interviewing? It's going to be a strategic program where we, it's rotating, etc. So I was like, sure, I'll interview. That was kind of it. And so then I interviewed for the program, and they wined and dined us. They took us out to dinner. They had like 20 other people who were interviewing from other colleges. It was in Washington, D.C. It was pretty cool. And they were like, you have a computer and a car. And I'm like, wow. And I think at the time it was like $32,000 a year. And I was like, wow, this is great. I could do this for a year. So that's literally how I got started. And so I started in what was called like the Phoenix program. There was 21 of us across the country, and we were sales reps. Like, I had my little territory, and I'm going to, again, age myself. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have, GPSs. So I MapQuest my entire territory.
MapQuest. I haven't heard that term in a while.
Okay. I'd print out all the directions, which meant I could not veer from the schedule because I didn't know how to get from one store to another store. And I had 36 stores, and I had my route, and I built displays, and, I sold Sharpie and all sorts of different office products for Newell Rubbermaid. And that's exactly how I got started in CPG. And then as part of the training program, I got exposure to all different, cross-functional sales departments. And then from there, they kind of really help you figure out, after 18 months or so, what's your next move. And so as crazy and unsexy as that is, that's literally how I got my start in CPG. And then at that point, I was enjoying it. I was having fun. It was a good company. And I just was like, I'll just keep going till it doesn't, work for me anymore, or until, I don't like it. And so, 24 years later, I guess I kind of caught the bug for the industry. And I literally have been doing something in this industry ever since.
Yeah, I find a lot of people have a similar, path into CPG. We've had a few people come on, Dave and even Alex and myself. It's not like I grew up thinking, oh, I'm going to sell like products like this, right? I'm going to go work at PepsiCo. Like that was never a thought that I really had until later. And I started to realize that there's a whole industry behind all these products in the grocery store. Like it didn't even occur to me as a younger person that was such a large career. And now been in it for a long time and I love it too, right? And sort of dedicated my professional life to it.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys. Yeah. Like for me, I same experience. Like I kind of met people at a career conference similar to you and fell into it. And then I don't know about you, but for me, like seeing things hit the market was like the first, like when you launch a product or you get distribution and suddenly it's on the shelf. That's when you're like, oh man, like I'm making something happen in the world that's really there.
Yeah. So. I still to this day drive Steph, my wife, absolutely nuts because we go down aisles that like I go down aisles to see like the Vega display now. Like I don't even work there. Like I have nothing to do with this, but I'm just curious and go check it out. She's like, can we just shop and get the hell out of here? Leo's running around. And it's like, no, I got to go see it. Because exactly that. Like the first time I saw an end cap that I was responsible for putting up, I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. Like it blew my mind.
And you do get passionate about it. I remember in that job. Oh yeah, the other thing besides, not only did we get the car, but the car had a giant Sharpie marker stickered onto it.
Oh, okay? Really? Yeah, really so, incognito. Perfect.
So then my friends would like not drive anywhere with me. I was like, I'll drive. I'll drive us to the bar. I'll drive us to the city. They're like, no, we're not going to the giant Sharpie mobile. And so I was like, look, it's a free car. I will drive it, right? I literally do not care. But I remember like I was living at home with my parents right after college. So we're all my friends from high school. So we'd go out on the weekends to the city. I was like, I'll drive. No, we're cool. Let's just take the train or walk, anything other than having to get in the Sharpie mobile. So yeah, that was also part of it.
It's only a little bit of snow. I'd rather just walk than go in the Sharpie mobile. Thanks. So then you left Rubbermaid and went over to another large company, PepsiCo. So maybe talk a little bit about the decision to leave and what PepsiCo was like and what you did there.
Yeah, so I was in Boston at the time with Rubbermaid. I had moved from New York to Boston, and I was an account manager, basically a junior account manager, working under kind of she's still one of the most respected people in that industry. And so I was so grateful to get to work under her at the time. I didn't know anything about account management or forecasting or calling on a customer like at that level. So I learned a ton. But then I was eager to go back to school and get my MBA, and just felt like maybe doing it before I had kids or a boyfriend or anybody else in my life that I had to like accommodate, I should do it, try to figure it out. So I started applying to schools and ended up getting into the program at Fordham, which is in New York, and sort of decided, okay, I've been here, 4 years, got a lot out of it, go back home to New York and maybe just start a new adventure. So that's when I started looking for opportunities in New York and landed at PepsiCo. So it was cool, even from like the first interview. The building is insanely massive in New York in Purchase, right? And it's like one of the largest companies. Everybody knows it, right? So I remember being like, wow, like this would be great to work here, right? Especially if I want to continue my career. So as Justin knows, I over-prepared for the interview. I had a binder, I had photos, I had planograms, I had went into stores to take pictures. Like I was really eager to make this happen. So went in, interviewed with a bunch of people, very intimidating because everybody is really smart. And then on the way out of my interview, I tripped on a rock, like right outside my what would be my future manager's office. And, he says like, he's like, I think that's why I hired you. I just felt so bad. You wiped out right in front of the office, tried to get up and like wave.
Good way to stand out. No one else
told me that story. Yeah, I was all by myself. But anyway, when I got the job, I was like, this is great, right? If I want to stay in this industry, I want to really learn from the best people with the best tools, biggest brands. I felt really lucky. So I was like an analyst on the grocery team. And so I was like the IRI person pulling reports and, looking at ACVs and, making sure that like all of our execution was done, and got to just present and be around so many crazy people that really helped me develop. And so that's, my journey started there. And then I just kept sort of being open to different opportunities that came up. even if it was things that I didn't think was in my path. So I ended up out in the Midwest managing distributors, managing franchise bottlers, which I never thought I would do.
Yeah.
But a mentor of mine and a VP at the time there had said, I think this is a great opportunity. I don't think you realize it because, you know, you're still young and new in your career, but just come on out with me and like, this will open up, you know, just kind of more experiences for you. So I moved out there, managed the bottlers for a couple of years. And that was a really fun experience. One of my favorite jobs still to this day was managing the bottlers in the Midwest. And then I just kept moving around. I was an account manager for a little bit on C-Store. And then I ended
Vanessa,
up
before that, because I remember when I was at PepsiCo and we had sort of the separate bottling group, I don't think most people really know what that means or what that is. So maybe you could talk about, like, you're saying you managed the bottling franchises now. Like, what does that mean?
Okay, good question. So the way PepsiCo and, you know, Coca-Cola, a lot of the beer companies, they're structured where the parent company sort of owns all the brand development, all the marketing, you know, creating these massive brands and supporting them, selling it to the customers. And then they partner with local bottlers, distributors in the markets, but they're not owned by the company, right? So you have to kind of wrangle them in and align them on what you're trying to do for Walmart, for Walgreens, for Kroger, right? For these large customers, so that the execution is consistent, you know, across all these stores, despite the fact that the execution is very fragmented, right? By city, by market. And so they had franchise managers like myself across the country that would be responsible for sort of representing PepsiCo. So if there was any issues or communication and things, I was responsible. I was their face to PepsiCo, right? And then also dealing with any issues and challenges. And then secondarily, sort of alignment. So I would have a call with the Walmart team or the Walgreens team, and they'd say, okay, we need to run a promotion. It's a hot price. Walmart's going to do a rollback. I need you to get the bottlers to give a nickel per case, right? I'm going to give 10 cents a case, and I need you to align them on 5 cents a case, right? And then everybody in my job had to do the same thing for every bottler that hit that customer, right? And so that was very fun because it wasn't easy. People don't like to spend their own money. And so it was a lot of influencing, negotiations, building relationships. Like, I think that was some of the things that I took away from that role, right? And also, I managed rural Illinois, rural Iowa, rural Indiana, and I was 26 from New York, right? So it was a very male-dominated rural, you know, industry. And so I had to kind of figure out how to influence people who at first I didn't think probably respected me at all, because I was, right, like this kid from New York, from corporate, right? And they were like, you don't know anything. So I learned how to sort of navigate and influence people that, you know, build that trust and figure out how to get things done with people that, you know, maybe are different or have different visions or different views on how to do business. So I think some of why that role was so great was I felt like the jump it made me as like a professional and a leader. I really jumped so much, and I didn't realize I learned any of those skills, right? Which is probably why my mentor said, you don't realize what you're going to learn in this role. Don't take it just for face value, right? Like there's going to be skills that you can take. And by the end of it, I had tremendous relationships with all the bottlers. And I learned a ton from them. And I don't think I'd even be where I was today without everything that they taught me too. So I do feel lucky about that.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for expanding on that. Sorry, I jumped in and interrupted you. So from there, then you went into the national accounts, right?
Then I managed C-stores, convenience stores in the US for a bit, short stint. And then PepsiCo had a big reorg in 2008, another recession, another sort of economic downturn in the US. And they ended up buying two of their largest bottlers, right? So they consolidated a lot of jobs where there was sort of duplication. And so my job that I was doing at the time kind of got punted back to the team that was the bottlers that was in the local market in Minneapolis. And then I got put in a new role back in New York, managing sales strategy. So kind of what Justin was doing at Vega. So then I moved back to New York and led the sales strategy team for all of our like hydration brands. So basically everything that wasn't soda, essentially, is like the easiest way to explain it.
Cool. And then you moved from Pepsi to dairy and yogurt and everything else.
Yeah, I went to Danone. I was at Danone for 10 years. So that was a great jump in the sense of like just a change. You know, part of me still looks back. Like I probably could have stayed at PepsiCo forever, right? Like I loved working there. I do not have a bad thing to say about my experience. Still, when I look back at people and leaders and mentors, still some of the best managers I've ever had. Still some of the best coworkers I've ever worked with, and like just amazing. But I had this like quarter life crisis. I think I turned 30 and I just said like, I don't know, I just want to go try something else, right? Like try a new company. I don't know if I don't have regrets. So I wouldn't say I regret it because I had a great experience at Danone, but you know, probably didn't give enough credit to like staying at PepsiCo longer, working through my quarter life crisis there, right? Like I think, you know, there was a little professional maturity there that had I probably had, I would have stayed, maybe not forever, but a little longer. But nonetheless, my experience at Danone was 10 years and it was a great one. So like I said, I don't regret it, but you know, I'm older and wiser now. So I probably would give somebody else different coaching. But I ended up okay. So then I moved over to Danone and I did a lot of research on like, what kind of company did I want to go to, right? I had talked to somebody or read an article or a book, I can't remember, that sort of said, you know, when you're looking for your next job, it's not like about the title, right? Don't like write down what title you want. Talk about what does your day look like when you go to work? You know, this is when we used to be in an office, right? Who are the people you're around? What are you wearing to the office? Like, is it casual? Is it formal? Like, what kind of, you know, meetings, you know, do you expect to have, right? Like, what is the hierarchy that you expect? It just kind of said, like, picture all of these things. What kind of brands would you like to sell? Like, not the brands, but like health and wellness or this or food or beverage or, you know, and so I did a lot of exploration because I loved Pepsi so much that I didn't want to end up like a company that just was the wrong fit. And so I ended up with Danone, and it was sort of all the things I was looking for, right? It was at the time, I think it was under $1 billion at the time, but it was Danone's largest like growth engine for markets. So they were just plowing money into the US and they wanted to overtake Yoplait as the #1 yogurt. So I'm always up for a good challenge. I never take the easy job. I never take like the one that you just like punch in and out. Like I thought that was fun to sort of be second, and their mission was to be first, right? And so so that was a little bit of like my motivation to go there, and probably a little bit of why I stayed so long is we were on a mission, right? And we were growing. You know, some point during my tenure there, we bought White Wave, right, and just acquired more brands. They really spent a lot of time focused on health and wellness, focused on well-being for their employees. So it was a really great place to work. I have both my kids there. I got married while I was there. I mean, a lot happened to me in my life while I worked there, and they were very supportive of all those parts of the journey, as well as I felt they were doing right by sort of the consumer, right? With the products they were making, the investments they were making in sustainability, health and wellness. So I was proud to work there for a lot of reasons. So I think that's what made me stay for as long as I did.
Yeah, things like being like the world's largest B Corp, right? I know when that happened, that was such huge news and something that, you know, a lot of smaller companies did, but to see someone that big do it was pretty cool. And then when they purchased White Wave, so White Wave, for anyone listening, owns the brand Silk, like almond milk and coconut milk, and it also owned Vega. And so that was sort of the point in time when they bought White Wave that I guess, Vanessa, you got the opportunity to move over to Vega, where I met you.
That's right. Yep. So I exactly. I ended up at Vega by way of Danone. So my manager at the time had worked with the current sales leader at Vega. And I was in his ear about wanting a different opportunity, wanting to maybe move to something smaller. You know, I've been doing CPG on these big brands. I felt like, how many times can I be, you know, a regional director or, right, even though I loved it, like I'm all about sort of adding things to my resume versus doing more of the same just to kind of learn, right? So I said, White Wave at the time had a couple of different, or Danone had a couple of different brands, Happy Family, Vega. There was a couple of smaller business units that were run slightly independently. But I loved Danone, so I didn't really want to leave and go work at like a startup per se, but I really wanted a different experience. I knew that natural food and bev was sort of the way of the future. It was sort of infusing itself into the traditional CPG world. And I felt like I need to learn this. I need to understand this, sort of way of doing business. Natural channel. It was the only gap on my resume at the time of like a channel that I hadn't worked with. And so my boss said, hey, they actually have an opening. My buddy just texted me like, director of US, like, do you want to apply? And I said, yeah, this is perfect. I could stay at Danone, work for this cool brand, right? I'd love to. Yeah. So then, kind of by luck, I guess, or another over-prepared interview where I probably geeked out big time.
Did you remember to trip?
No, I did not trip this time. But Justin was creeping over the cubicles, watching me as I walked around the office for my interviews, like trying to figure out who I was and what I was doing in the office. Justin, why don't you share that? Yeah.
No, I wasn't important enough to have an office, so I was sitting in the cubicle and I could hear her having her interview. And Vanessa is very short. She's got a big personality, but she's very short. And so I remember we were laughing about when she left the office and walked over, she was below the cubicle. So Lauren Bailey, who was there with me, was like, did you see her? Did you see the person interviewing? And I said, no, I couldn't see her. I couldn't see her above the wall. So it's like she just was there interviewing and then vanished.
Yeah, it is true. So that was my start at Vega, right? And I was managing the whole US at the time and going to Vancouver once a month, which was super cool. I had never been to Canada other than up in like Nova Scotia for work like years ago. And I got to kind of start to experience all things Canada and my love for Canadians and for the brand, right? And so it was a wild ride. There was a lot of things that, challenges in the business, road bumps, but there was also a lot of amazing people and amazing experiences despite it. So it really was a great I think I was there 3.5 years. It was an incredible experience. And I learned a ton about the channel, a ton about just, how they were, they were a startup and they got bought and their journey to kind of get to where they were, right? Mm-hmm. And the journey to scale up and the people that work there, right? And how that differed from my experiences at all these other companies. So I definitely left learning a ton from everybody around me and better off than when I started there.
Yeah, and that's I had a similar experience kind of going into Vega just on the Canadian side, but I was larger CPG and went to Vega, similar to you, larger CPG going to Vega, and I found the transition difficult at first. Vanessa can even share feedback actually from when that she gave about me when I first started there, but I found it difficult at first because it was so incredibly different. So maybe talk about like the differences between working for a large traditional CPG versus a more natural based startup type company.
Yeah. So I think, there was a lot of things that were a transition, especially for me, because I didn't have natural experience. And at the time they'd just been purchased, they were acquired by White Wave as when they were a startup. And then White Wave was acquired by Danone. So they went from a $100 million business to $6 billion overnight, being part of this, and there was a very negative perception about like the blue chip CPG coming in and was just going to be super corporate and, which, that's not necessarily my MO, but I had the resume. And so therefore, like, I was kind of going in with that perception. So, I had to sort of really kind of admit up front with my team, like, look, I don't have natural experience. Got it. I want you to help me learn that. But here's the things that I do have and can help with our mission and what we're trying to do. And, really bring them in early on to say, I'm going to learn from you as much as hopefully you learn from me. Right. And let's do this together, which I think helped. Right. The second thing I remember, I'll never forget, it had to be like July or August. So I was pretty new. I think I started in May. And one of my account managers called and said, okay, we're having problems with the bars. They're melted, completely just melted by the time they get to the customer. And, the chocolate's melted and they're damaged and they want us to, pay for spoils. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. Like we can do that. But, why are they melted? Like what's, how are they getting melted? Should we call the trucking company, that comes out? She's like, well, we FedEx them in a box. They only need like 10 bars or whatever. So we FedEx them, and I must have left it on the porch of the store. I'm like, I'm coming from companies where we're like loading in 18 wheelers of pallets, right? Like,
Yeah.
and so I just like did not think that we were FedExing like 10 bars to a store, right? Not only is that not efficient, but also like just the scale of like how many units, right? How slow the turns are in this category, right? I just had no idea. So 5 tubs a year is a good business in some of these stores. It was a big shift for me, and just like that was a big eye opener, right? It's not right or wrong, it's just totally different, and I had to get used to sort of the scale and volume of what was going in and out, and also how we were getting things to customers, right? Like in FedEx boxes, and that was obviously not something I was used to. And then just for as much as we're passionate and we say, hey, we still go check out the aisles of our old brands, there's something uniquely different about people who sold that first tub with their hands, that built the company, right? That passion that people had for this brand. Like I would be such a poser if I tried to pretend I had the same passion. You just can't, right? Like they built this from the ground up with their own hands, and the level of passion that I saw was next level. Like people at PepsiCo are passionate, people at Danone are passionate, I'm passionate, but not the same way. It's just not that same authentic sort of like raw passion that they were so vested, which also sometimes made it difficult to manage, because when you're that vested, right, and you feel like you helped build the company, when there's change and you don't agree with it, it is a much more emotional experience, an expressive experience, right? For people, it's harder to get over it because they built the company, right? And there was a little bit of that too, that I had to work on with the teams every time there was change, right? Because change was a coming, right? Like with Danone, and there was expectations, and not always change that maybe they believed in for the brand. And there was a lot of heartache, and there was a lot of like raw emotion, and so there was a little bit of that coming on board, and sort of managing the team through those challenges as well.
Curious what that feedback for Justin was.
You can share.
I'll save it when we're offline.
She
I know
told me
Justin's podcast. I want to keep it, pro Justin. But Alex, call me later, okay? And I'll give you the real.
She said I was an asshole, basically, but it's fine.
No,
she said I was an asshole, but years later we became friends.
You're best friends now, and so
now we're best friends.
Exactly.
So it worked out.
I mean, you played the song, you get no backseat, so
can't take it back.
Exactly.
So and then your current job, Dryers. Tell us a little bit about the scope of that role, and how you're liking it, and a bit about your team, and how that's all structured.
Yeah. So this is a bit of sort of like a new experience for me. Not the role itself, but just so Dreyer's brand ice cream is now part of Frenary Global. Dreyer's ice cream brands were the old Nestle ice cream brands. Okay. So brands like Haagen-Dazs, Drumstick, Outshine, Edie's ice cream. So there's, I'm not sure in Canada what you have. Haagen-Dazs, I think, right?
Haagen-Dazs and Drumstick.
And Drumstick, definitely.
So big brands, big Nestle brands. And Nestle sold off the ice cream business almost 3 years ago now, right before COVID started, and sold it to this private equity called Frenary. And they are global ice cream. They only buy and invest in ice cream brands. So they're sort of like a pure play in ice cream. So it's a private equity play, but it's not a startup, right? We're established brands. I mean, Haagen-Dazs is the largest ice cream brand in the US, right? So it was an interesting sort of opportunity for me to say, okay, I can go get some private equity experience now, right? And kind of see how that's done, but with some brands that are viable brands that, the business isn't going to go under, tomorrow, right? Like these are brands that, that are established. And with Frenary's ice cream expertise, they felt that the investment was worth it because they have efficiencies and they have expertise in ice cream to really improve, areas where maybe Nestle wasn't as focused on it in the past, right? So they felt they can make it better. They have a blueprint. They're excited. They're passionate. And so when I interviewed, those were all the things that I felt. And again, similar to my Danone experience, they were number 2 in the US at the time. And they were committed to become the number 1 ice cream brand. So Unilever's ice cream brands, Ben & Jerry's, Good Humor, Klondike, that was the number 1 ice cream brands in the US when I, for decades, okay? But when I took over, so they were committed. The whole company's mission was to become number 1. And we did. We just recently became number 1 in April. And now we have to sustain it. Yeah. But this was huge, right? And it took a lot of reformulation of the product, understanding kind of what wasn't right, fixing, improving our operational, capabilities, making things faster, making them better quality, right? Investing in marketing, a little bit differently, a little more specific to really resonate with each brand versus sort of just blanket marketing for all of the brands together, right? Because they all have different consumers and they're all trying to talk to a different person. So they've done a tremendous job. The sales team has done a tremendous job. But it's been an evolution, right? Private equity is completely different than Nestle, right? Than big CPG, right? And how they think and act and do. And that's been a change for a lot of people, right? So we've been navigating through that transition, right? And getting people sort of on board with the new vision and mission of the company, new ways of working, new tools, right? New financial ways and lenses of looking at the business. And so that's been a little bit of what we've been working on as a sales leadership team since I took over. And, the people are great, right? These are seasoned people that have 20 years at Nestle, 30 years at Nestle, right? They were trained, right? Like, and they understand customers, right? And they understand how to sell. So I think for me, it's more about change management, not like telling people how to sell their customers, right? Because I learn from them. I sit on these customer meetings and learn from them on how they engage and handle challenges, and they're tremendous. It's a tremendous team. So this one, I kind of went in and also felt like, let's all hold hands, I know some things, but a lot of things too. And so maybe we can do this together, right? And I think, hopefully that's been good so far for me. And I don't know, the jury's out, I'm still new, but so far it's been great. And I've been very impressed with the pride that the company takes in quality and spending money on quality. Like they track, basically consumer complaints per million. And if it gets to a certain amount, like they spend time to reformulate. Or most recently, we just put more nuts on the top of the drumstick because they felt like it looked cheap and it was not the way we wanted to show up. And so even though we're trying to cut costs in other areas, that's not a place they're going to skimp. They're going to invest to, get the quality to what they believe it should be for the number 1 ice cream company. And so they take that so seriously that when you go out there with the customers, you kind of then, put that energy out there too. And you're sort of proud of what they're doing, right? And they're definitely putting their money where their mouth is, so to speak, on that, right? Bolstering the brands, bolstering the quality, bolstering the communications, talking more specifically to each consumer for those brands. So that's been fun to watch that transformation and watch how much passion they have for the brands and what they do.
It seems like your last 2 roles, both like pretty, a lot of flux going on as you've come in. So how, like, you obviously had teams before that, but how would you say your leadership style has evolved as a result of those experiences in environments where a lot of the team kind of had a different situation, and you're part of almost representing a new direction?
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. So it's definitely, I've learned a little bit, but what I've realized is with my style is, and hopefully I think people who've worked with me and for me have come to respect this, is I'm comfortable having a crucial conversation or having like a real discussion. So I won't wear kid gloves and just tell people, you're right, this sucks, blah, blah, blah. Like, I will listen. I'm very approachable. People know they can call me for anything. Like, they could talk to me and I will listen, but I won't always tell them what they want to hear. And they also know that. I will listen, and I will try to kind of always show both sides of the spectrum, right? Like, totally understand why you feel this way because this, and this. But here's where the company's trying to go, right? And if we don't do this, then we can't get to XYZ, right? And here, and I'll give a suggestion, like, here's how I think, you could probably handle sort of some of the, conflicting, feelings you have about the change. So, I don't always tell them what they want to hear, but I think when people call, they know they'll get a straight answer and they'll get some honest feedback. And I don't just say, okay, just suck it up and move on, because people don't want to hear that either when they're really having an emotional reaction. But I try to get them over the hump, right? With some tough talk where I can, right?
Yeah.
But also with a sort of understanding that, like, I understand why they feel the way they do, right? So doesn't always work. I've had some crucial conversations that have gone south, but I've never had somebody not come back after going off on me, pissed at what I said, come back and say, okay, after some time, I can see that. Okay, what you said made sense. I didn't see that in myself, but now I see it. So thanks for having that conversation. Nobody's ever had that with me before. And that's why it was so shocking, right? So I've kind of like learned to be okay with the uncomfortable, that I'm not going to make everybody happy, because I always have the right intention. And eventually, even the ones that are really like, where I'm like, oh my gosh, this person's so mad. Now that I have a little bit more years under my belt of doing this, they always come. I prepare. Justin knows I'm an over preparer. I prepare the conversation in a way that I want them to see it, right? Like, I give specific examples, so that they can come back and say, I do see it, right? I'm very specific. So that's sort of the way I manage teams through change. I'm very approachable. And like I said, I don't always give them the answer they want. And so I'm always surprised people will come to me knowing that I'm not just going to like coddle them. But I think people do want to hear the truth. They do want to be better, and they do want to move from wherever they're stuck, right? And if you could do it in a way where there's mutual respect, right? Because you have to build that trust before you have those conversations, then I think that's effective leadership, right? And I don't do everything right, and I have my moments for sure, and my team will tell you that. But I really try to just plant my feet in, like, this is what I want to be known for. I'm not political at all. Maybe it's slowed me down at times in my career, but I'm not political, right? I will fight for the team. And at the end of the day, I always say, and Justin heard me say this, I will sleep better at night with my head on the pillow, knowing that my team knows I truly went to bat for them, right? And that I did what I said I would do, then put my head on the pillow for somebody above me, that I did what, lip service, or, just kind of nodded my head because, right, I know that's, and that's not saying that's the right thing to do. That's how I operate. And so I think people know they can trust me. If I go in a room and I come back and the answer isn't what they wanted, they'll go, shit, I know you did fine. I know you did push. I know you did represent me. I did. And that's all I want at the end of the day, right? Like, if I never get any further in my career, if the people that have worked for me and with me can say that, then I feel like my job is done, right? And I could go, that's all I want at the end of the day, because we don't always have that. Honestly, I've had that in some bosses, and I've not had that in others, and I know how it makes me feel. And I think that, like, as you move up in your career, you are solely responsible for these people's career, right? Like, and developing them and going to bat for them and calibration and making sure that you're, helping them get where they need to be. It's kind of you as the manager, right? That everything's so matrix that you're the one that sees it all, and you're the one that needs to put them in places to be visible, or give them the coaching that, if they go into another role, could bite them, and so when I take that so seriously, to have that responsibility at this point, like, I'm not in the day-to-day, right? Like, I'm not in the day-to-day doing the job with them. So I feel like my role now is to take their careers and I have them in my hands, and make sure I'm doing right by them. And that means both coaching and having, like, tough conversations, and also advocating, right? And making sure they're being represented above.
Love it. I love the empathy too. Huge.
Not with Justin, but with others. Yeah. With Justin,
it's a balance, right? Like, empathy is really important. And I think there needs to be a mutual respect. And, like you said, like an understanding that your leader is out for your best interests. And if there is, then when they receive the feedback or the crucial conversation, you're a bit more open to it. And sometimes, and I've had this with myself, right? You get negative feedback, and at first it hits you and you're kind of defensive and pissed, and you reflect on it for 24 hours, 48 hours, and you're like, shit, they were right. And then you So if you understand that, and I've had managers that have been fantastic that I knew when I left the room, they had my back, that they were amazing. Like they had my full best intentions, and it's been great and such a comfortable feeling. And I've had managers that have not, had that, and they were more in it for themselves. And the effort that I put in as a result of that manager is very different. Like the amount of hours I would work, what I would do, just how my enjoyment in my job, like it's absolutely enormous. So Vanessa, you talked about you're not in the sort of day-to-day pulling Excel spreadsheets, looking at IRI anymore. It's a lot on the coaching side, right? I also know you have, 2 young children. So I wanted to know, I guess, 2 things. One, how do you balance, being a working mom, like work life and mom life? And then how, do you structure your days to be efficient?
Okay. So first question, if my husband hears this, I won't let you
Bring
live
him
it
in.
down. But my husband is, I think, the reason I can actually have a career and be a semi-decent mom at the same time, right? Because he truly takes it like we're 50-50. I'm going to do 50% of what needs to be done with dad life, house life, like what laundry. And I feel like we're doing laundry and dishwashing like every single day. I'm like, I don't understand. And also, hey, I support you. And like, I will support whatever ambition you have to do what you need to do. Right. And so for me, that helps tremendously. Right. Like I do not think, because I met him later in life. So I was cruising. I was on like, my own path, like chugging along, moving, trying to take over the world. And then I met him at like 32. Right. And I'm like, oh boy, do I have to like slow this down now? Or like, am I going to have to, are you going to be okay with this? And he was. I mean, it was obviously one of the first conversations we had once I realized like, oh, okay, this is going to be serious, because I don't know if I could have had a partner that didn't support me, because I had so many ambitions, right? And also the way we want to parent and what we want to do for the kids. So I would say he helps a lot in taking half of the workload so that I can have a career and then also do the mom thing with the kids. And it's not kind of like perfect all the time, and it definitely ebbs and flows, right? With jobs that I've had, or times in the year where I probably put a lot into work and maybe like, do stuff for the kids, but could be doing more. And then there's other times where I have some flexibility and I'm like all into the PTA and I'm volunteering for things at the school and I'm there and, I feel really good. And so I think the way I find balance is like, I try to make every moment with the kids like quality over quantity, right? Because I'm not always around, right? Especially when I was at Vega, I was traveling all the time. Pre-COVID, I was traveling all the time. Right now, I'm not traveling as much. But when I was, I said, okay, I could sit here and like cry on every flight that like I'm not with the kids for like 3 days and I could have total mom guilt. Or when I come back, like I'm just going to have quality time with them, right? And do something with them and engage with them in a way that is really meaningful versus a lot of hours consecutively where maybe I'm like half ignoring them because they're stressing me out, right? Because I'm just I've tried to kind of focus on that quality over quantity where I am traveling or I'm trying to do things, just to make sure that, it's always meaningful moments with them. And my husband, who, I give him credit, but can't give him too much credit, right? Because then he'll hold that over me forever. But he has tremendously helped me figure out the balance and kind of encourage me to kind of continue with my career. What was the second question?
This is just a test to see if he listens to it or not. Now you'll know.
See. Exactly. What was the second part of the question?
The second question is, how do you structure your days to be efficient? So it kind of leads into that, right? Because you want that quality time with your family. How do you, focus and be super efficient during the day so that you can have that?
Yeah. I mean, I'm like a little bit type A. I'm sort of a planner by nature. And I'm like a paper planner person. None of this millennial, like Google Chrome sharing family calendars. Like, no.
I'm you're just saying things now.
I just, I'm a paper planner. So I'll like look at my schedule the night before to understand like what calls I have during the day. Right. And then figure out like what I need to get done. And then I try really hard not to work at night. Like I try to just get my things done during the day. And then at night, I just do homework with the kids, watch some football if football's on with my husband, and then do all the other sort of like when I overcommit myself to like all these other volunteer things at the school. I take care of all of that at night. So if I have to send emails, if I have to, coordinate something. So I really try to use the day for like work stuff and get everything I need to get done. And then when I shut down, I just probably stay up a little too late at night. And obviously, like, I don't like have a lot of self-care. I'm not like going to the gym. Instead, I'm like working on, other things or spending time with John. But that's what I choose to do right now. And I figure at some point, the kids are going to be older. They're not going to need me to help them with homework. They're probably not even going to want to hang out with us anymore so that I can work out again. Right. So it's going to ebb and flow. But I have everything in the calendar, whatever I need to do for the day. And then I love to like check it off, right? Like, okay, I took care of all these things, sent an email, paid a bill, whatever. Like I list it all out for what I need to do. And then before I go to bed, I try to get it all done. Sometimes I don't, but I get a lot of joy in just checking it off and seeing that I finished.
Love it. I'm actually in a foray into the past with a physical planner. I don't know.
He does do it. Both of my best friends do it. Before every episode, he's printing out stuff. So
I kill so many trees. Justin used to laugh when I would print out our whole presentation and he said, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I just need it in front of me. I got to take notes. I have to, So
Alex does the same thing, oddly enough. So
it feels more real. It feels more real. I don't know.
Yeah. Hopefully, whoever is listening will have some throwbacks to MapQuest and paper planners. Okay, maybe I could bring in the older crowd. Justin, you guys have young friends. I could bring in the 40+ crowd to the podcast just through my, nostalgia of MapQuest and, paper planners.
Love it.
So one of the things that we like to ask all of our guests is we call brand fan. What is one of the brands or products that you absolutely love that you either can't live without or you just love what they're doing as a company, some of their ad campaigns, etc. So what is a brand that you love right now?
Okay, so I would say I thought about this question. It's a very random one because I don't actually use the brand, but when I think about what I know about companies and brands, it is amazing what they're doing. So Red Bull, okay? Oh, yeah. So Red Bull to me, I used to drink Red Bull, but no more because I probably don't even need it, but all the time. It's pretty tremendous, right? What they've managed to sort of create and sustain with virtually no innovation. Okay, other than seasonal flavors and a large and small can of regular and sugar-free, right? And it's not a knock. I mean, they've had sustained growth for decades. Okay, since I was at PepsiCo, they were the biggest. They were the leader in energy. They're still the leader in energy, right? And they virtually have not innovated, right? Which you think about CPG.
It's wild.
PepsiCo is coming out with 100 items a year. Danone's we're chasing everything, right? Yeah. They've sort of just said, okay, let everybody else chase the fad. We're good with regular and sugar-free and 2 sizes, right? But they have just stuck to, they know who their consumer is, right? They don't waver. They're not trying to get the soccer mom, right? They're not trying to be somebody they're not. They're we know who our consumer is. And every time a new consumer ages in, we're going to grab them, right? And we're going to keep them. And then we're going to grab them. And I think that's pretty phenomenal. And they execute the 4 Ps. They don't get too fancy with, they have great pricing strategy, simple promotions, they don't overcomplicate it, I guess. Right. And oh, by the way, the category has some negative halo over it, right? Every once in a while. So they've managed to sustain this, right? Over all these things with virtually no innovation. Right? They stay true to who they are. And all they focus on, I think, is bringing in people as they get into the age and demographic that they want to pick up. Right. And they just talk to them. I see a lot of brands and companies make mistakes of they're just they need growth. So then they start talking to another demographic that probably isn't the one they should be talking to. Right. Or they innovate 72 items, spend all their effort and money doing that. And that's okay. Right. I mean, look. That you get ACV, you get TDPs, you get all that stuff. But to see a brand not do that, right? They're a private brand, not private equity. They're not publicly owned. They're just a private brand. They're just having a heck of a good time growing, right? I think that's pretty tremendous when you think about just a brand, especially in the food and beverage space and what we all know about brand and brand building and all that.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. I think the platform they've built is insane. The amount of videos that I get served of someone jumping out of one plane and flying into another, or the fact that they just won F1, the team that they sponsor is, I mean, it's a crazy story. The way they've integrated their brand into an entire culture of kind of extreme living, and then use that to keep, as you put it, refilling the bucket, right? Yeah.
Which is like what marketers try to do, right? So anyway, I haven't had a Red Bull in a while, but I respect the brand for what they've been able to do with. I don't get any videos. Clearly, their marketing is correct. They are not. They are not targeting me on Instagram. So I guess it is true what I said. They don't want the soccer mom. Okay.
I do think I'm starting to age out. Like I was at a gas station. They had a contest. It was like a QR code contest to enter for a chance to win, to go up in like a plane with one of those stunt pilots. And for a second I was like, oh, that sounds so cool. And then I was like, I actually have a 1-year-old and I don't think I want to do that anymore. So I'm kind of going through those growing pains right now. But
yeah. Good question. I like that one. That made me think a little. So thanks for that.
Yeah.
Last question. If you were to be talking to a group of young professionals, say in their whatever early mid-20s, and you had to give them one or two pieces of advice to take away and implement in their career, what would that advice be?
A lot to say to them, but I think I guess one important thing, which I wish somebody told me early on, some did, some didn't, is, I think be open-minded, right? I think sometimes in CPG at these big companies, it could get very linear, right? I want to be an account manager, then I want to be a director of sales, and then I want to be a VP of sales, right? And I want the title, and it could be very linear, and that could really not be the best path for you, right? Some of the jobs I've learned the most were ones that I would have never went for if somebody didn't say, hey, I know you better than you know yourself right now, and listen to me here, right? And here's why. I would have just been very linear as well. And you have to work for a long time, right? So like, look at your career as sort of a matrix of opportunities, right? And almost like a bingo board you're trying to fill up of all the opportunities versus the title. Because Justin and I have a big, opinion on this, right? The problem is our culture of LinkedIn and Instagram and all this shit has created us to be focused, just obsessed with titles. And that means something more than the right opportunity, filling out your bingo card, right? With all the experiences you want to get, and at some point in my career, I started to focus more on that. Like, okay, I don't have natural channel. I don't have this, right? I haven't led this type of team, or I only have this kind of experience. I need people management. Right? And so once I started to put all the things in my bingo card that I wanted to fill, when jobs came my way, it was a lot easier for me to say, was this the right job or not? Did it actually create a new experience for me for something that I didn't already do, right? Or is it more of the same because the title is what I want, right? And so can't title chase. You will get to where you need to be for sure, but you got to focus on sort of those experiences and opportunities and try to block out the noise of sort of what social media and LinkedIn and sort of just the culture has created, right? So that's kind of a big advice that I didn't figure out until a little bit down on my journey, which is fine, right? Which is fine. And then the second thing is, even though I gave my whole spiel before on how I feel like I'm responsible for people's career and as a manager, no, you have to be an advocate for yourself, right? Like I've shied away. People have shied away from going after things that they feel, maybe they want, or they talk themselves out of it, right? Or they think that somebody else, manager or somebody, is gonna, kind of get them where they need to go. That's true to a point. But if you don't advocate for yourself, if you're not clear on where you want to go, people can't help you get there, right? And have the confidence and go after things, right? And worst thing that can happen is you don't get the job, right? Or somebody says no, which you got to swallow your pride a little bit. And I've definitely cried in a car before once or twice after some news I didn't like, but there's something else that leads you to your next thing, and you'll figure it out eventually, right? So those are kind of two big pieces of advice that I've learned along the way. And some were hard lessons for me, but I figured it out. I came out on the other side okay. But that is, I think, really important for people coming up, starting in their careers and sort of navigating through this crazy world.
Both of those I completely agree with. They make a ton of sense, and I've heard you say them in workplace settings, so I know that you like truly live by those. It's great advice for anyone, regardless of career stage. Honestly, that's perfect.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks, you guys. I love the questions, and hopefully you don't have to edit too many of my 4-letter words or anything like that.
No, you're all
No,
good.
you're good.
You're great. So good seeing you. When are you coming back to Vancouver? Because you used to come here all the time. I thought we were friends, and now you never come here.
So
What's going
sad,
on?
but the kids are asking about the reindeer again, Justin. So
Oh, I've got some good photos actually.
Justin would send reindeers to the kids and tell them it was the North Pole. So now they think he like is buds
Elk.
with Santa. Yeah, so they'll be expecting some more pictures this year.
Yeah, there's some good ones when I was in Canmore, and then up in like around Gross and stuff, because tons of snow. There's like elk running around and it looks exactly like reindeer. But then it got super deep because they started asking me questions like, well, why aren't they tied up? Why are they running around? And I had to start making up more and more stories. And now I've got myself into a huge complex.
Yeah, because Leo was so little that like Justin wasn't into the like lying part of parenting yet. Like, you get to
they FaceTime me and I had to react. I was like, oh, they're just out hanging out, and so now I'm stuck, and now I'm just a huge liar.
My kids are extremely intense, like they're miniature versions of me. So they're like, why, Justin?
Yeah, they're grilling me.
Why are the reindeers not tied up? What happens if they're not there on Christmas Eve? And Justin's like, oh, there's a bit of connection. I'll just call you guys.
Yeah. So like if the reindeer are there, where's Santa? Show me Santa right now. It's like, I don't know what to do here.
Your little cute thing backfired because my children are intense.
They're too smart. They're too smart.
Too smart. Well, I was honestly, Alex, so nice to meet you.
You too,
Justin,
Vanessa.
Thank you for having me on this fabulous podcast.
Thank you for coming on.
And happy to. And hopefully I did you proud, but good luck with this stuff. And I mean, I keep listening, so I love the one so far that you've recorded. And I've been learning a ton from the people that are jumping on. So hopefully one person listens to this episode and they, learn something. So we'll see.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Thanks, you guys. And I'm saying happy Thanksgiving, but you're Canadian, so never mind.
Happy Thanksgiving to you.
That was too much.
Happy Thanksgiving to you. Also, this will probably air in January. but happy Thanksgiving to you.
Happy New Year. All right. Goodbye, you guys.
Thanks so much,
it was a pleasure.
Bye.
Thank you
Bye,
so much.
Vanessa.
Okay, bye.
Well, Alex, how'd you feel about Vanessa? She is my best friend, before you answer. Remember that.
I think she seems like she's a pretty good US best friend to have. She seems
fair.
Yeah. I don't know if she'd cut the mustard here in Canada. If we were both here, I might feel differently, but she seems pretty great.
Yes. Yeah, she's awesome.
So what'd you think of what she had to say?
For as well as I know Vanessa, there were some new stories in there and new pieces of advice that I found pretty interesting. I think from a takeaway standpoint, I love the concept of being open-minded and trying new roles and seeing where your career takes you. I've described it in my own career as ticking certain boxes cross-functionally. She called it a bingo card, which I've never heard it described that way, but actually like makes a ton of sense of like, how do you get across all these different things, right? I know for me, it was, I wanted to do sales and then marketing and do sales strategy or trade marketing and people leadership. And like, how many of these different areas could you go check out so that you can be the best well-rounded leader you could be? And in some ways that probably slows you down from getting that title going just up one path, but overall it makes you just a better leader. So I loved what she said there. How about you, Alex?
I think from my end, I mean, aside from her general energy and enthusiasm, which I think was kind of contagious, I found the piece that she had to say about the importance of courage and candor and her leadership style around balancing that approachability and empathy with that candid, direct feedback, I thought was a really important thing for anyone really who wants to work in sales or wants to eventually be a people manager, because you're really going to need those skills of empathy and the courage to remain direct, to remain clear, to remain candid. So I thought that was great.
Yeah. And it's a tightrope walk, right? Like to have empathy, but also be super direct. So it takes practice, and it's something that takes a long time to master. And she's done an amazing job of that.
Totally.
So huge shout out. Thank you to Vanessa for coming on the show. With that, we'll get out of here. Thanks everyone for listening. Follow us on our social media platforms, and we'll chat with you next week. Talk soon.